Any photo-related questions? Or we just talked about photos you just talked about it for 10 hours, so you probably want to talk more about Merman.
You know, I'll talk about whatever you want to talk about, or the audience. And I'm seeing a lot of questions.
Are we still got our proxy friends back there?
I have a question for Vincent from Spence. He wants to know, have you ever thought about making a feature film?
I've thought about it since I was a kid. And I think cinema is one of the coolest mediums out there today. I'm not sure the majority of films these days are being made to the same level as the ones, you know, 10, 20 years or 50 years ago sometimes. I am practicing my craft. I have all of 1.5 to 2 years of experience as a filmmaker, and it's going to be a long time before I feel ready to go out and make like a full, you know, feature-length film. My goal right now is to work on commercials as a director and DP for a few years. It's something that Ridley Scott did, who made Bladerunner and Black Hawk Down and a bunch of other fantastic movies, and kind of hone my craft over the next 5 years or a decade. And whenever I feel like I'm ready to direct a big thing, be 150 by then, I'll do it if the opportunity knocks, you know. But directing is, you know, who doesn't want to be a director? But you got to have a healthy respect for what it involves, man.
Agreed.
You know.
Anything else from the internets? A series of tubes? Or locally?
How does the business of photography changing into motion production? Will there be stills in 5 years?
I'd say there'll always be
There'll
stills.
always be stills.
And what was the first part? I didn't catch that. I'm sorry.
How's the business different in stills versus video? And the answer is, just like video and film, they're overlapping similarities, but
actually, it's dangerous similarities, because some of them use the same words to describe something, and sometimes if you're in the middle of transitioning between stills and video, when someone's talking about something, there's some dangerous crossover, especially with lighting, and you covered that in your class today.
A little bit.
That it can be a little bit confusing, but.
Yeah, and the reality is in terms of, I can't help being a technical guy, but that camera looks super dark. I don't know if people are seeing it. I can't help it.
He's got to look good.
I'll tell you a quick story about my background as a photographer. My father is a photographer, and I used to give him my that works.
Side lighting.
Nice little side light. I used to give my father my 30 best slides at the end of the month. I'm French originally. Oui. And I would go see him over the summer, and I would shoot, you know, my 30 best slides of the month, and I would hand them to him, and he would stack 10 on the left and 20 on the right, and he would look at me very calmly and open his drawer, pull a pair of scissors out, and slam the 20 slides down with his scissors, going right through them. In other words, destroying the images. And he would say to me, these are not in focus. They're not well exposed. I don't care what you want to say, but if your images are not technically good enough, I don't want to see them. Do you understand me a little better now?
I do.
Yeah. So that took me, and I'm still working away from that, because
I secretly slip stuff into Vince's drink every once in a while.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. It's just, that's why technique to me has always been really important, because I think that when your technique is poor, it detracts from your storytelling ability. But, you know, it took me a long time to appreciate a blurry photo and what that can do on an artistic level. So how did we get there in the first place? But that's a story from my background in terms of technique and where I come from and why I'm, you know, a little bit too obsessed with it. Whereas now I really, really enjoy the story making process a lot more. But on a very quick side note, the business model for film and photography could not be more different for me.
The business model, for sure.
Yeah, because I think that was the original question.
There's a lot of dangerous crossover, but the business models are very different.
And, you know, the main big ones are in film, no one owns any of their equipment. No one buys a dolly, a Fisher dolly. You can't even buy a Fisher, as far as I know. The film schools have them. You rent them. Your back pocket?
Yeah.
You can't buy a Panavision lens. You rent them. And the reason is these things are like one of a kind sometimes. They're not mass produced. So as a filmmaker, as a director, you don't really own anything but what you have in here and in here. And as a DP, you might own your own set of, Zeiss primes, that cost you $100,000 or more at one point. But as a photographer, you tend to own all of your gear. It's a very different business model and a very different way of working.
And the good side about the film portion of not owning your own gear is that there is typically budget associated for the rental of the right gear for the job, and there's less assumptions built in that you're going to be bringing your whole dog and pony show, and it scales according to the production better than, in the client's mind, it scales a lot better in the commercial world for video than it does for photography, because there's an expectation that there's going to be those line items for a Fisher Dolly on there. And if you're coming from photography and you've been working with a client for a certain amount of time, and you're going to start showing that same client, used to just show them an invoice that looked like X, now it's going to be X plus a whole bunch of other stuff. And so there's a lot of kind of lost in translation stuff that happens, and that has made it difficult for a lot of photographers that I know are trying to make the jump in kind of working through the pain process with their clients. Now, if you have the luxury, sometimes I do have this luxury and sometimes I don't, of just this is how much it costs, then everything's great and you can get to go on and make your craft. But the business side of it, the relationship side, there's also a lot of finessing that has to happen either through your agent or directly with you and the client. You feel this? I mean, there typically are very different budgets too.
Different budgets, different crew size, different approach. And I think we covered that earlier today. One of the questions I'm seeing over and over again here coming in is, one was from, I missed the name now, but I'm a graduating student. Should I focus more on stills or video? What would you say to that?
I'd say video.
You'd say video. I would say video. Still photography is and will always be my first love. That will never go away. That being said, I think the market is definitely fast forwarding into the world of video. Mm-hmm. There might be some backlash 5 years from now. People might say, you know what, there's so much video. Where are all those fantastic still images? Where are all those photojournalists, all those fashion photographers that were so prevalent 5, 10 years ago? What's happened to them?
Well, I just did a job recently. I have done them in the past, but recently for a client that I can't talk about right now because it's for a campaign that you all will see shortly. But stills pulled from video, and they look gorgeous, remarkable. So that doesn't bode well for those of you who are hoping to hang on to the craft.
Is that the Citibank job you were talking about last night? Just kidding.
Yep, he's just kidding. No, but generally speaking, I would advocate in the same way that Vince has here, that at my core, I'm a photographer, and it has been a big transition to becoming a director in addition to it. I've loved it. It's like there's a reinvigoration of my spirit to learn a whole new set of, how to use a whole new set of tools, how to work with a whole new set of people, and so I've been very professionally engaged, but at my core I still enjoy making still pictures, and that has translated stylistically for me when I'm talking typically to clients or to ad agencies. They describe the work that I do in that area as very cinematic because every frame is really well composed. And so there are some good things that translate to it, and I'm sure there's a host of bad ones as well. But if I had to pick one, I'd probably choose video. Hopefully you don't have to, and you can really enjoy both crafts. But
and I think the reason we'd say pick it, or at least learn about it, is not, again, a judgment on which is better than the other. It's more of where the market is going. I think you always, and Chase definitely always has a beat on what's coming up. It's something I focus on as well, is what's next. Either we're going to follow what's next, or I think Chase and I like to try to help push the envelope towards the direction of what we think should be next. And that's kind of the fun part of being in this business right now, is actually taking an active role in defining what should come next in your small way. Uh-huh. And the beauty of it is, 5 years ago you had to get your hands on a $250,000 camera, and now for a few $100 you can push the envelope.
Yeah, and there's arguably, it has created, in a strange way, backlash is the wrong word, but I do have a really intense appreciation for the stills now, because that's part of my personality, and I think we might be very different than this. Vincent is the type of person, he needs to get in and devour he needs to really know every little nook and cranny in that lens right there. And I'm more like crow flying at whatever shiny shit is in the room. And you know, there's benefits and drawbacks to both. And for me to be able to toggle back, I have like, oh wow, so this is, gosh, I got to capture everything in the picture here. And it's a shift in mentality, and it's a challenge bouncing back and forth, which is a challenge that I love. And it kind of keeps it interesting. But I agree with what you said also about trying to be forward thinking and not to the point that you're sacrificing what's happening right now, but in a fun, keep it interesting, and I try and keep it light. I mean, we're not changing the world. Usually we're not curing cancer. If you can make a beautiful documentary film, you absolutely can. I haven't made a beautiful documentary film, so I'm not, and I'm trying to be realistic about what it is that I'm doing. I don't know. Maybe some questions from the series of tubes?
The series of tubes says, or Amelia Dowd says, for someone wanting to buy new gear, what would you suggest as the top 5 photographic purchases, considering you already had the basics, body, prime lens, and a bag?
That's everything.
Yeah. I'd say save your money.
Yeah, save your money. Don't, you know, gear is great and it will allow you to make different images, but it's a black hole that never ends, and it's a vicious circle. And if you have money left over and you have the prerequisite gear that you need to get going to make a good image, whether it's film or stills, invest the rest of the money into a passion project and tell a story or document something or make an experiment, a visual experiment of some kind. I think that's a much better way. I mean, Reverie for me was, I could have bought 1 or 2 lenses, or maybe 1 big lens, and I wouldn't be sitting here today. It's the best, you know, a little bit of money that I spent, or a lot of money, on, well, when you buy camera equipment, you know, $5,000 is just, you know, unfortunately a drop in the bucket. It's 1 camera body. So I could have had 1 more camera body 2 years ago, or I could have shot Reverie over the weekend with some friends.
Get rid of him.
And you know, frankly, that's a lesson I learned from Chase. I told him, you know, right after I shot Reverie, that the only reason that I shot Reverie was because I'd seen him talk about how he, I don't know if you still do it, once a year, will gather some friends together.
Usually a lot more than once a year.
Well, usually a lot more than this. That's awesome. We'll gather some friends, some people he wants to work with, and dig into his own pocket and not work for a client. Just work for himself. Shoot what he wants, how he wants it, push the envelope, and be completely free to do what he wants. And I heard him tell me that in person, and I was just like...
We had lunch. I'm going to paint the scene. It's this great place. I'm trying to remember the street. It's just in Soho, and it was when Vince was living in New York, and I am in New York quite a bit. So we connect whenever I can and whenever he can, because our schedules usually don't coincide. It was a summer day, sitting in this little Italian place, you know, great breeze going through here, and he says, "I can't believe you spend your own money on this stuff." Shit. And I
that's
said,
what clients are for.
Right.
Clients pay you to go shoot stuff.
I feel like because I have good clients and a solid business, that's why I'm able to take some money and put it into some projects that I want to shoot. Because if you're just so pretentious that you only take the world's most perfect jobs, you're going to be incredibly disappointed when the world's most perfect jobs don't come to you. But you have to create something that looks and smells and feels like the things that you want to create, such that you'll get hired for that in the future. And so I would always take some money and throw it at a production. And I think by the end of lunch, and a bottle of wine or 2. We had...
Very possibly.
Yeah. I wasn't there. I can't say.
I don't remember.
Me neither.
But I remember that key conversation. That was a very big influence for me, because when Reverie, you know, the opportunity came, I just jumped headfirst into it, never looked back. And you know, I think it's really important to realize that as a photojournalist, editors will see your eye and say, you know, I'd love to see what Chase will do with this story. I like his style, I like his eye, I like the way he did this last story, and I'd like to see what happens when he's sent on this other assignment he's never done before. That's editorial world. In the commercial world, they tend to not really want to take risks. It's a CYA world where they say, I like Chase's portfolio. I like that shot he shot on page 6. Chase, can you do that again for me for this big client? And the problem with the commercial world is people don't come to you saying, I like your eye, unless you're really, really, really good. Can you try some, just go make this look good. They tend to come to you, when you're starting off at least, and say, I like what you did here. Here's my product, and I want you to do that again here with this style. Because there's a lot of money involved. They want to minimize risk, and they want to be able to show their client, look at what he's done it before, or she's done this before. That's why I hired them. Look at their portfolio. It's on paper. And that's why I hired this photographer. There's not enough experimentation going on. I think the mark of a success is when you have people coming to you and saying, I'm going to roll the dice with you. I want you to go unleashed and go shoot something that's going to just knock the socks off of me.
Yeah, in a commercial environment, that is exactly right. And I've noticed it personally in my career, what I was asked to shoot. And I don't know if it's the times are changing or my career is changing or evolving, but even just 5 years ago, it was, it's a car ad, the car's on the right, the tree's on the left, and the girl's in the middle, and it might as well be a monkey. I mean, there's a great layout that they've got sketched, and they know everything, every detail, and now, for me, it's much more, what do you think about this? And because of the understanding that we all have of the world and of media and of culture, it's even more collaborative now than that. It's like, what do you think about, here's my problem. I have a creative problem as I represent Crest and I want my teeth to be whiter. How do we show that visually, as opposed to what it used to be is the toothbrush is in the girl's left hand. And so, and either it's a sign of a career evolving, or there is some, my personal belief is that there's a shift in how ad agencies are thinking. It's less about McCann Erickson and there's the big behemoth agencies now, which I still have a ton of respect for, but it's a lot lighter, faster, arguably more renegade on the agency side than it ever has, because they've experienced cuts and they're having to do more with less, and so the creatives get involved in earlier on in the process. But.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we as a society have seen this much change this fast in our history ever, and it's being propelled by technology, whether it's the web, email, iPads, iPods, iPhones. Yes. Things are changing so fast that we tend to get whiplash. And it can be very disconcerting, right? I mean, 20-year photographer. I never wanted to do anything other than work for National Geographic and Time magazine, and I've been very fortunate enough to do both. But you know what? Time magazine is, having a difficult time these days. And they let go a lot of their great staff members, photographers and writers, when the economy started to, collapse. And who knows when they'll get those people back, if they ever will. Whereas now, Gizmodo is a site that I read more often than I read Time magazine, or people's blogs. I read his blog and other people's blogs more often than I read the newspaper now.
It's really weird to walk by the newspaper and look at it and think, that's yesterday's. And I have right now, right here, it's kind of, just conceptually it's strange, and that thing in and of itself has changed our jobs a bunch. And the commercial side, not necessarily the fine art side, because both of us do that stuff too. Yes, well, the internet.
How do you think, the internet would like to know, how do you think tablet PCs will change your work or how you shoot?
It's a new medium to communicate with. That 8x10, I think it's 8x10 iPad is a larger iPhone. It's a bigger tablet, and it allows us. I have no problem saying I have read more books since I got my iPad in the past 2-3 weeks than I have in the past 2 years. I stopped reading after a while and just did stuff online, and I am now reading a lot of books on my iPad. Why is that? Why did I stop reading for a while? I used to read a lot when I was younger. Much more a visual guy. I've never been a big reader. had a little dyslexia growing up and all that fun stuff. So reading for me is not as much fun as watching a movie or a video. But I read now all the time. It's just, and why, you got to ask yourself, why is that? Is it because it's just so easy to download a book to your iPad and read it when you're on the plane? And I don't know if the iPad's going to save print media. It should. It could. I don't know if print media is going to be smart enough to grasp the potential. Print media has time and time again proven they really just don't get it. And I hope they do. People may not know, I was a New York Times photographer for 7 years on staff. And it was a very important day when I canceled my subscription. That was like betraying my my brotherhood, my lineage. But guess what? By the time the paper landed in the morning on my front door, I had read that 12 or 24 hours before. And other than seeing the images, I've never liked the whole folding thing with the New York Times on Sunday. I like the tablet much better, and I think there's a lot more potential.
There's so much. It's such a deeper engagement for me personally, the immersion to be able to go and explore. I was jesting earlier about being a crow and flying at shiny stuff. That's, again, more of a personality characteristic that when you set a tablet in front of me and I'm able to experience the media the way I want it, rather than the way somebody in a room down the street wants me to experience it, to me that is the major difference. I can explore the things, the links, go down the rabbit hole, so to speak, in a way that I can't in a fixed print media environment. That being said, I do, and so qualify, I think the iPad and devices like it are going to completely revolutionize healthcare, specifically education, because all the books are going to be available all the time to all the students.
How many of you guys grew up looking up stuff in dictionaries and thesauruses?
Right. Environmentally, it's going to be really interesting, I think. We got to find a way to get those devices out into the third world. We got a challenge there. But that being said, so I did a fair qualifier there. I really do love picking up printed media. I've been in New York 3 times this month already. Every time I've come back, I've left a piece of clothing in my hotel room and brought back some printed media of things that were interesting to me, inspirational. So I haven't divorced myself from it in any way, shape, or form, but I don't know, whatever the heck that means. More internet questions. I love you, internet.
Well, it kind of keeps following on what you were just talking about. Do you think, from KB Suarez, are we moving toward a world of Bladerunner with motion billboards and just everything is video and hardly any more print?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's only one entity that knows more about you than the federal government, and that's Google. And that's not a joke. I mean, Google knows every single thing you've ever searched, ever. So all those secret things you've searched on Google, if, they know what you're searching for. They know what you buy, what you read, what cars you look at, what magazines, what pictures you stay on, and it's being tracked. It's kind of scary. They have the technology so that when you walk through a place, if you got an RFID chip or whatever it is, that you got one right back here, yeah, you too, yeah, they got you, and they know who you are and what you're doing. It's just all technology, and it's about unfortunately, I guess not unfortunately, but it is unfortunate. It's about selling you stuff. They track what you do because they want to be able to sell you what they think you're going to want to buy. They don't want to waste time.
But,
and
but the flip side of that is that we're more in charge of our purchases in a westernized economy, in a westernized world, get more, as we as consumers get more buying power, then the messages and the things that we see are going to get more and more tailored to us. So I have to look at less things I'm not interested in, which is going to have all kinds of its own cultural problems. We're worried about ADD and cartoons and stuff right now. When everything is tailored to us, we're going to have, if we think we're an egoistic society now, we're going to have a whole hell of a lot of problems in the next 10 years. But
all right, I'll give Demi a break because he or she has been asking the same questions for like 7 minutes straight. And Demi says, nobody cares about the futuristic pontification questions. How about practical photo video questions? And I couldn't disagree more. But Demi has been asking for stills. If you had only 2 lenses to put on my 5D Mark II, what would they be? And for video. And only because I've seen this 20 times, I'm going to give this person a break. If I had to buy 2 lenses for 5D Mark II, number 1 would definitely be a 51.2, because that really lends itself to being a perfect cinema lens. And the second one is a harder decision, maybe a 24-1.4. And that's what I would just kind of shoot everything with.
Specifically for video?
Just for video, just for video.
Yeah, I was going to say I would, not for video, but for stills, I would go zoom lenses. I'd go 2 of them at probably 24-70 and a 70-200.
Those are the mainstay lenses for Canon or Nikon.
Yep. There you go. That's the power of the internet now. If you ask your question
enough times.
Yeah, more. And you guys, and it's not just about the internet here. I figured you guys probably got to check.
You guys paid to be here, so
yeah.
you can actually
I want to feel like
take it
guys,
over.
Yep. He's out of here. You want to sit up here?
Yes.
What percentage of your work do you think is still versus video now?
My answer, it's really hard to answer because it's changing by the week, but it's a third still only, a third video only, and a third still plus video. Is as honest a breakdown as I can give you. So some clients just want stills, some clients just want me to shoot video, some clients want me to do both.
Samesies.
Samesies.
Interesting.
How do you handle the both? Do you end up setting up separate days, separate shoots, separate models, separate?
I'm not sure if the internet can hear that. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, I will repeat it and I'll dive into it. That is not a pterodactyl, that is the cooler. I don't know if you heard that.
A Foley artist would love that thing.
That's right.
That would end up in Jurassic Park somewhere.
That's right, as the guys that shoulder joint on the Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yes.
What was the question again?
When you're working with a client.
Oh yeah. Okay. This is a great question. So the question is, when you're working with a client that wants both stills and motion, how do you typically go about capturing it? Do you do one then the other? Do you both at the same time? And it's very dependent, and I want to hear your response to this too. But it's very dependent on what it is that I'm capturing. By and large, people want you to shoot both at the same time because they think that the actor or the central character is the most important thing. And the reality is 90% of the time, they couldn't be farther apart how you'd shoot it from a still perspective and how you'd shoot it digitally. The client comes like, yeah, we figure you can point one camera at it once and then point a different camera at it and get it both. Woo, we're going to be saving money left and right. And the truth is they don't know shit. Is this a family show? Probably a family show.
We're drinking beer. It's not a family show.
Okay. My response is generally, and again, I'm going to qualify it. Depending on what almost everything that I shoot is separate. You can, if there's lighting involved, definitely. That's the definitive, yep, it doesn't happen now, it happens later. If it's naturally lit, then you're kind of in a ballpark of you can have some still action and some cinematic action happening in and around one another. But I laugh a lot at the assumption that you can do them together. And just to set one camera down, I sit down my Nikon, pick up a red, and everything, okay, just do the same thing you did. Or even worse, shoot them at the same time. So.
I mean, if you're doing a sit-down interview against a white seamless of an actor, you might be able to get away with a locked-off video camera and a locked-off still camera and shoot them simultaneously and probably get away with it.
I would blow my brains out if someone tried to hire me to do that.
Right, absolutely. But you probably could get away with it.
Totally.
The moment you actually try to become a filmmaker, it's such a different world. And when someone asks me that, I just understand that they fundamentally don't understand the two mediums. And that the difference is that a few years ago, you absolutely had to have different lighting for stills than you had for video, and different crew members and budgets. And you absolutely would, on a commercial gig, bring the same Michael Jordan, day 1 for video and day 2 for stills. You would never think of doing them the same day because you hire different people to do it and they use different gear. What has changed is that you can now consider, at least consider,
because of the high ISO cameras.
Because of the high ISO cameras, absolutely true. Shooting the same person on the same day with the same lighting with still plus video. That does not mean simultaneously. And I keep educating clients saying, I can do both for you. It's not quite going to take twice the amount of times. Sometimes it may take 4 times the amount of time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it might take a little less than twice the amount of time.
But it certainly doesn't take the same amount of time.
No, it does not take the same amount of time.
If there's any ADs, CDs, EDs, FDs, anything with a D after it, duly noted that it's not the same. And you guys
not the same.
Actually, it's the account people that want it to be that way.
It is. It's the bean counters, and you know, they're just reacting to the economy and wanting more for less. You know, I understand.
Same.
And the cameras can pull off some pretty incredible things, but these are not the panacea to everything. These aren't God's answer to this problem. They just help certain parts of it get better.
And one of the things that I want to make sure people understand, I have a strong opinion on this, is everything right now is so experimental. Like, I'm pontificating up here. You know, Vince is not as much because he's reserved and quiet. But no, we're learning.
Someone said I should have another beer.
You should take everything that we're saying up here with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Because we're just 2 guys in a fishbowl making stuff professionally, and we're willing to talk about it publicly in front of a couple thousand people. But the idea of us knowing everything couldn't be further from the truth. I am just once, you don't have to be faster than the bear in the woods, you just have to be faster than your friend. I'm, learning this as we go, just like everybody is. And so while I want to kind of retract some of the stuff I said about everyone should know that you can't do it like this, but I barely figured it out a year ago, and so an account director in an ad agency is certainly not going to know. And just to underscore the idea that that's part of what's wonderful about right now. I hear so much worried conversation, so much negativity, and I'm trying to dispel that with the idea that this is a very unique time in the history of the world. Never before have we been able to be, as the creative, been able to be both a content creator and a distributor at the same time. And any person in this audience or in that audience, or God forbid that camera's on because I would look gross with the camera right next to my face, whatever, never mind. But great. But that anyone can be a creator of content. I'm not making a judgment about the quality of the content, but that's exciting. If you do choose or are able to put out good content, people will find you and find it, especially if you do it on a repeat basis. And as another thing, all of this is changing. What I just said 5 minutes ago about us not knowing all the answers, the idea that we're content producers and distributors, all this is new stuff. Let's celebrate that. There's certainly an element of fear, but let's celebrate that. And we should get you a beer. Can we help with that? Is that
sure?
We drank them all?
Yeah, I think we cleaned them out. Those are my favorite 2 kinds, too.
All right, well, bummer.
Bummer.
Yes. Question.
Yeah. Shoot.
Hi guys, I know you guys have touched on this a little already, but I think I'm going to roll a couple questions on the internet into one, and that is, I think there are some folks who want to know how to get started, maybe with clients that aren't as sophisticated, and how you would actually maybe build out a budget for one of these jobs and how you would sell that budget to a client who is maybe a little price sensitive.
I'm not touching that one.
The short version is that there are no, it's the Wild West right now. And if you talk to, both of us have had agents, either have or have had agents at different times in our careers. And there used to be a very, very well-established methodology behind all of them. And there's still some threads that continue in that vein, especially when you're working, doing the kind of jobs that we do for a living. But when I talk about the Wild West, a lot of that is under fire right now. The short version, part 2, is you need to have a belief in your work, that your work is valuable. There's your creative time and vision, and where the media is going to appear. It's going to appear on the front page or the back cover of every major magazine, on the periodical rack, and online, and in 10 different places, you get paid more. And if it appears on your buddy's website, you get paid less. So that's kind of your creative fee, and then the production, and that's all this money and stuff that it costs to make the pictures. Assistants, wardrobe, stylists, talent, travel, all that stuff. And those are the fundamental building blocks of creating an estimate. Now, I can't advise anybody in the crowd about how to win specific jobs. There's all kinds of conversations that would open up about undercutting and about where pricing should be. And at the end of the day, the economy will hopefully take care of the people who are taking care of the industry, and it won't suffer too much. But generally speaking, those are the building blocks of getting noticed. And like anything, they're typically all negotiable. And if you have a line, I recommend you have a line in the sand. It's like you can negotiate, but at a certain point, you're not going to go beyond that, because it undervalues your work or shows that they don't recognize the production.
You've got to be responsible. To photographers, film may be a new way to make a living. What you can't do is what photographers should not do to one another, which is undercut each other, let alone go into a separate industry and undercut them. And that's going to happen to a certain degree, just because people are trying to cut down on fees and expenses with these new toys. But the reality is, we're all in this together. And while photography and film are both art forms, you can never forget they're businesses too. And that this is the way that we've chosen to feed ourselves and our families, and other people have done the same. So, the tools may be a little bit cheaper sometimes, but I tell you, one of the things I try to do personally is keep the fees the same. So maybe the tool's a little less expensive, maybe the rental's down, maybe you have a little less light package, maybe, less gizmos here or there. I try to keep the same amount of people working. That's not always easy, because it does require smaller crews at times. But I try to keep the creative fees up there as much as I can, because you are doing a significantly greater amount of work when you do both. It's not just twice the amount of work. I'd say it's easily 3 to 5 times more work when you're doing stills plus video. And you're exercising very different parts of your brain, and you're learning a tremendous amount to do it. And it's not easy.
It's true. You guys, the internet is aflame with questions, apparently, because all of the proxies have both their hands in the air.
Actually, my first question is, how much longer do you want to go?
Whatever.
I got at least half a beer left, so.
All right.
Sure.
So
but actually, I'm going to ask you a question.
Yes.
How long do you want to do it?
Oh.
It's like, I was looking, I thought we were done at 6, she said, so. I don't know.
Let's go 10 minutes.
Yeah, 10 or 15 minutes is cool.
All right, that sounds good. I think we had a question in the room. Would you like to hand him the microphone?
So parlaying on that subject, that we probably don't even want to go too much farther on, of pricing, getting into video, back-end editing pricing for a photographer seems to be the most challenging. Like, how long, how much, how do you charge per minute, what's that, where do you go from there? You're bidding a job and they want stills and video, and that, whatever my X dollars a day I need to get, it's going to take me 2 days, figure that in for video. But then the editing part could be days, weeks on video, Yep.
But,
you want to...
One of the hairy things for me always on any commercial photography bid is where you put that retouching money. You're negotiating as good of a fee as you can get based on the work, and retouching is a whole different part of and a big part of commercial photography these days. And I like to try and keep that separate whenever I can as a still photographer, and say, you're hiring me to produce the image or the material to go into the final composite image, and the retouching is done by another artist, another company. More and more, that's depending on the type of photographer you are, you bring that in-house or not. But I do try to keep, you know, that separated a bit. Same with film. Is, you know, you're hiring me as a director or DP or photographer to shoot the material. Either do you want me to, it's a question you ask your client. Do you want me to deliver the raw footage to you? Or do you want me to be involved in the edit process? Do you want me to, you know, choose the editor and be part of that? You know, film is, you know, we talked about it earlier. The production of it is, I'd say, 10%. The other 40% is pre-production before you ever go and walk on set.
That's only 50%.
And then the other 50 is the edit and the putting it together, special effects, and beer hasn't taken that much of an effect.
Right.
And it's
Vince's
a whole
math is off, you guys. No.
So it's not easy though, because you know, we all get squeezed and say, you know what, we don't have extra money for retouching, we don't have extra money for editing, and you've got to educate your clients and say, you've got to understand that, you know, one can only do so much, and this takes time, and if you don't want me to do it, you're going to have to do it. And I would much rather be involved and do it and give you the whole package. But, you know, do it the other way. Do it for free a few times. Do it for free once. You'll never do it again.
Yeah,
right?
We definitely, at as much as possible, I try and deliver a final package, not final imagery, not necessarily in a layout or anything. Video-wise, yeah. It will fall under my direction as the director of the piece to oversee the grading, oversee the editing, and a lot of times I bring those people in-house if it's negotiated for us to deliver the final piece. And what happens is the agency or the AD or the CD or whatever will come to my studio, work with me and an editor of my choice. It's not me sitting there at the final cut, but we bring in an editor, and those are priced by the day.
So it's an hourly day.
Hourly day
editing.
fee.
I don't do any hourly anything.
Okay. Editing is per day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like that, however long it takes. If you want an hour documentary from the footage, or you want 5 minutes, this is how much it is a day.
And yeah, and our estimates, we estimate how much we think it's going to be with the clause, and then it's like, this is an estimate. And there will be overages if we blow it, or if the creative direction changes, or if, you know, if. And that's the part that's really, that there's a certain amount of flexibility. And then, you know, Vincent's talked about all of us getting pinched, and sure, but you also, anyone who's seasoned in the business, a seasoned client, is going to know these things and is not going to ask you to do things that are crazy. It's only the people who really don't understand the client side that will ask you to do things that are absurd. But I try and own as much of the final deliverable as possible, because the difference between the video capture and what it's going to look like in the end could be 100 miles.
It's like delivering a raw.
It is. It's delivering a raw image. It's scary. And what, you know, I think the point that Vincent was trying to make, and that I will underscore, is that absolutely 100% charge for that service. I will never. There's nothing that just says, you know, we deliver the pictures and it's included, because the part that happens afterwards, there's another layer, another opportunity for creativity, and anywhere there's an opportunity for interpretation, there's a creative mind who's on that, it gets billed. And we're not nickel and diming, and again, the clients that understand this don't perceive anything like that as nickel and diming. It's the people that don't understand that think we just take a picture and hand him a CD, a compact disc after the thing's done. You know, it depends. A lot of it has to do with client education. A lot of it has to do with the kind of the client's own experience in this process. You get all types too. You know, I'm not saying it's. I don't want to paint just a rosy picture that everybody that I work with understands, but I try and choose clients that have a certain level of experience. It's a hell of a part of the job. It's a big part. The part that happens after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This question is for each of you. What is your single most enjoyable experience from photography or videography?
I don't know. Vincent showed me a video that he shot on his iPhone of his new baby girl eating ice cream for the same time, for the first time, and it was beautiful. It was awesome shot with the iPhone. I'm not going to answer for him, but it's that hard to answer that question. I mean, how do you say what your favorite moment ever in history
Which
of your
is
life
your favorite child, Chase? I mean,
yeah,
you
exactly.
know,
I don't have any children, but I like Vince's.
well, your theoretical child.
But yeah, I mean, God, you try and answer that one. That hurts.
That video of my daughter is one of my favorite videos. Nope, it was shot with an iPhone, and I had a thumb smudge on it, and it's with a window in the background, and she's glowing, you know. And it's a wonderful moment. It's her first taste of vanilla ice cream. And man, and you couldn't shoot it any better, not because of the way I shot it, because of what it captured. You know, she took a little taste of it, her little tongue swirling around, and she takes an even bigger taste of it. And the third one, she has her face in the ice cream.
Right. And then Chase and Mom has some ice cream on a spoon. She starts chasing Mom with it. It's beautiful.
So, you know, I mean, I think one of the ways I would answer that would be that some of my best experiences, you know, I've been to some cool places. I've been on the Needle of the Empire State Building. And that's a cool personal experience to be, you know, 1,400 feet up above New York City. But the relationships and the experiences that I've had as a photographer, a filmmaker, and the friendships that I've made have to be the most rewarding.
Yeah,
And
it's not even a question for me either.
You know,
for me, my favorite picture is constantly evolving. My favorite film, my favorite clip, like my favorite take, like, oh, this 3 seconds of video is just, oh, I love it. And then 4 weeks later, I have another one, and 3 weeks later, I have another favorite still. That's constantly evolving. For me, the best parts about our job, my job, our jobs, are the people. And I think he also said it right, that I get to go to some of the most amazing pieces or amazing places in the world to shoot for some of the best brands, and there's so much drama built in and around that. I would be happy to park all that and just take away the hanging out after you've worked 15 days in a row for 20 hours a day with someone that you just met at the beginning of that thing, and you're sharing something really cool. Like, that part of it is really, really fun. The people that you get to meet and photograph, and yeah, wonderful, inspiring people. Usually people in our line of work don't come to work and hate it. It's out there enough that they're in it for a reason that makes them feel good, and they're, you know, historically, culturally, they're taking a risk. Like, it's so risky to be a filmmaker or an artist. And so they come to work and they're pretty psyched about what it is that they're doing. That is something that's immeasurable for me anyway.
J-Dog says Vincent's falling asleep. Let's call it a day. We're not too far away from that. I think the whole team is falling asleep.
Yep. Ton of respect for everyone who's paying attention to all this. And like, this guy sent it super hard today. Out there in the internet world, can you, and in here in the classroom and out there, would you guys give this guy a round of applause, please, for a second?